Hey, are you interested in knowing how to build your clientele in Cambly Kids? If so, this is a video for you. But first, my name is Celeste. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, I share about my life as a wifepreneur. And if that's something that interests you, I hope that you'll subscribe and click that notification bell so that you are notified of other videos I upload every Saturday. So today we're going to talk about Cambly Kids. I'm going to share 9. I'm looking at my list over here because I don't want to kind of get off on those little tangents that sometimes I like to do. But I'm going to share 9 ways that I have built my Cambly Kids clientele when I first began. And clientele, I mean my student base. When I first began Cambly Kids and how I continue doing that, because I have had to increase my client base recently because of all the things that are going on with ESL companies based in China. And if you're not familiar with that, I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm going to link that video above so you are familiar with what's going on in the online ESL industry. But this is how I began with Cambly Kids over a year ago and how I'm continuing to use these 9 strategies to increase my client base. So let's get into that right now. So you've been hired by Cambly Kids. Yay, congratulations. And so now what do? How do you build your client base, your students? The first thing that I did is that I opened as many class slots or class times that I could in advance. Now, if you're able to do that a month in advance, well, that is even better. But for me, I was not able to do that because I care for my elderly mom. And so every week our schedule changes based on her doctor's appointments, based on her physical needs that I need to help her do, take her to grocery shopping, those kinds of things. So that my weeks are different. They never look the same. Excuse me. And so because of that, I'm only able to open my class times a week in advance. So I try to do that every Monday afternoon. I try to begin looking at the next week at all of our appointments. Typically those are set by then, and I begin opening my class times then. So if you don't know, Cambly Kids, each class is 30 minutes long. And so think about that when you are doing your classes. In the next video for next week, I will share how I open up my classes and give you some ideas of how to make that a little easier on you as you are thinking about that. So open as many slots in advance as you possibly can. Number 2, I always message my students before class. I typically do that the day before. So today, when I'm filming this, is Wednesday. And so I'm going to be messaging my students through the Cambly app, Cambly Kids app, for Thursday, my Thursday students. And what I typically do is, especially if they're a new student to me, I will say, I am looking forward to having, and insert the child's name, in my class tomorrow. We will begin our class promptly. And the reason why I put promptly is I want to let them know that I expect them to come to class on time because we need to end the class on time because I have other students behind them. But I have to say, I'm looking forward to meeting so-and-so. We will begin our class on time. Thank you so much for choosing me to be your child's teacher. I look forward to our fun class on Thursday. And then I put Teacher Celeste. So that's what I do. It's a little personal note. Maybe they read them, maybe they don't. But the ones that do, I've gotten a lot of responses back from parents saying, oh, we look forward to seeing you, da-da-da-da-da. And so that's just a great personal touch that I do 24 hours in advance with my students. Now, if it's a student that I've had for, like I've had some students for a year, I may send different messages to them, or at the beginning of the week, like Sunday, I will send, hey, looking forward to all of our classes that we are having this week. Remember, we need to arrive on time, kind of make it a little personal there. The third thing that I do is that I make sure that I am prepared for class. That means that I'm looking at their next class. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, I will link that video above. I've already had a video on that, but be prepared. which means having supplemental materials available. At the end of this video, I will share those two links to you of supplemental materials that I have found and have been quite successful in using in class. And so that way, if it's a new to you student and they whiz through that lesson very quickly, you will have other things to do rather than fumbling around and like, oh, what do I do now, etc. So I'm prepared. I have reward systems. I have books that we read, additional games that we might be doing. I'll be thinking of other questions, extension questions that I could be asking throughout the class time. Number 4, especially if it's a new student to you, the first few minutes of class, I try to get to know the students. Now, some parents may frown upon that, but this is a way for me to connect to the student, help them form sentences of familiar things that they know, but also I write notes. There's a little notes section on Cambly about the student, like where do they live? What their day includes, their family, do they have pets? Because I will use that in future lessons as we are talking about different topics. So I don't spend a long time. I'm not talking about 10 minutes, but maybe 2 minutes about getting to know them. You know, where do you live? What city do you live in? Was it hot today? Do you have a dog? Do you have a cat? You know, do you have a brother? Do you have a sister who lives in your house? Those kinds of things. What's your favorite color? It depends on the level as to what I ask them. So those are 4 things that I do. Let's continue. Number 5, I make the lesson personal. And that's where this getting to know them in number 4 is really helpful. So if we're talking about clothing, which is one of my lessons for today, I will ask them, you know, what kind of clothing do you have? Do you wear dresses? And this is very good for boys. Oh no, I'm a girl. I don't wear a dress. Or a girl, yes, I wear a dress. Well, what color dresses do you have in your closet? And they may go and actually show me their favorite dress. So making the lessons personal is very helpful to keep your clients, to keep your students coming back for more. Number 6, this is, I think, one of the most important things, is to praise your students. I mean, think about it. When I was beginning a new language, the first language that I was learning was German because my grandfather was born and raised in Germany. And so I thought it'd be really cool to learn German and so that we could be talking and nobody in our family would know what we'd be talking about. However, the German that I was learning in school was not the German that he learned because it was a formal German and he lived in a very poor area. And so they had a kind of a slang German that they learned. So, you know, it didn't work out too well. The second language that I tried to learn was Spanish. And so when you're learning a new language, you're so afraid, at least I was so afraid of making a mistake. I mean, in Spanish, you have female and male nouns, and I mean, it's just all different than English. And so think about that. When you were learning your second language, how did you feel? And so I had a wonderful professor in college, and she would just praise every little thing that each student did. And that was so helpful because it made me want to learn this new language and to really study it more and more. I've forgotten a lot of it, but at that time I did. So praising my students is very important. You know, high fives, doing different kinds of wonderful sounds like this. You know, those kinds of, yay, you are a superstar reader, okay? So as you get to know your students, you will know what will work with them and what will not work with them. But just constantly praising them when they form their own sentence and it's in the correct order and it's the correct subject and verb conjugation, praising them for doing such a great job. Those things really go a long way. And you never know when a parent is over in the corner eavesdropping in your class, they like to hear that. They like to hear when their students are doing well because they're investing. You know, it may not be a lot of money that we're making, but in some of our countries, developing countries, you know, what they're paying is a lot of money to them. And so they want to make sure their child is being successful. So praise their efforts. Okay, number 7. The 7th thing that I do is that after class or at the end of my teaching day, I will message all of my students afterwards. And this is kind of what I do. I use a little sandwich method. And if you've worked on other platforms, you kind of are familiar with that. But if not, let me explain that here. So I'll say, I was so excited to have student's name in my class today. They did a great job with, and I praise them on one thing that they did well. Now, sometimes it's very difficult to find something to praise them on because they're struggling so much. So maybe if that's the case, like today earlier in my other platform, I had a new to me student and they were really having a hard time with everything. I think they were really probably in the wrong level. But what I did, as I said, they were so excited about coming to class. I mean, they had a smile on their face the entire class time, and they were so eager to learn. So I praised them for coming to class, ready to learn, being focused, and trying really hard at all of the class material. Then in the sandwich method, I will list one thing, maybe one or two things that they can improve upon. You know, please encourage so and so to continue to say their S sounds after their words, like dogs, cats. This letter is very important to show that it is more than one. And then I will use the last one, another praise, they did great with knowing their colors, they knew their numbers, something that they did well. Thank you so much for choosing me to be child's name's teacher. I look forward to our next class together. And then I sign my name, Teacher Celeste. That lets the parents know that this is not just something that, we're going through the motions, that I'm actively listening and wanting to help improve something in their new language learning. So many parents have sent me back, thank you so much. This is helpful. We will continue. I might even send a video clip, maybe a YouTube video that will help them continue with a letter sound. Now, I will note that some countries have banned YouTube, like China has banned YouTube. So you might need to look at the country that your child lives in to know if YouTube or other resources that you might want to send them actually is acceptable in their countries. So sometimes I'll send a little worksheet for them to do. It's not required, and I don't do it every single class, but for some students I will do that. Okay, the 8th thing that I do is I make them a regular, and we're going to talk about this in my next video because this is going to be part of my scheduling strategy. So if you are currently a Cambly Kids tutor, you already know where that button is. If not, I will share more about that in our next video, so stay tuned next week for that. And then the 9th thing that I do is that I really work really hard at not canceling classes. I know life happens, but if you're consistently canceling classes, then the parent will be looking for other tutors that are more consistent. If I've had to cancel a class, for example, last week, an emergency came up with my mom. It was unexpected. And so as soon as I knew about that emergency, and Cambly likes you to do at least 12 hours in advance, so you're not put in Cambly jail. And we'll talk about that more in our next video too. But I messaged the parent and said, I am so sorry that I'm having to cancel this class. My mother had a medical emergency and I am her caretaker, and so I need to attend to her needs. Thank you so much for your understanding. I hope that we can reschedule this at a future time. And so I let them know, I don't share, all the details, but I let them know this is not because, I wanted to go and have lunch, or I wanted to, go get my nails done, which I do my own nails, but things like that. But I let them know that this was a real emergency and why I could not teach their class. Parents are very understanding and very forgiving. They know things happen. But if you just cancel and you don't send them a message, especially the students that you've had and you've been building that rapport with for quite some time, After this happens a few times and you don't really give an explanation, um, and I mean a general explanation, they're going to be looking for other tutors, and rightly so. You and I would do the same thing. We want consistency, we want um, dependability, and so be that for your student. So, by doing these 9 things, I have built and I'm continuing to build a large student base on Cambly Kids. What do you do? Are there other strategies that you have tried and have been successful in using for Cambly Kids? If so, leave that in the comments below. And I hope that you'll tune in next week as I share my tips for scheduling on Cambly Kids. So make sure that you give this a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Happy teaching.